All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes, where I take your questions and the questions from real world leaders around the world, and we work through the principles and the theories of leadership and apply them directly to your day-to-day situations and struggles. So if you're coming to this live session late, no worries. You can always drop down into the comment section. I check the comments from the previous day's live feed, whether it's on a podcast, whether it's in YouTube, and make sure that I get those questions and answer those first. So as we queue up some visitors, let me go ahead and start tackling those questions that I received yesterday, or through private message. If you want them, keep it anonymous. You can always email me, cm@cameronmorsey.com, or direct message me through Facebook. Hassam, so good to see you here as always. First question came in, and it was a really good one, actually. It is in regards, how do you keep documentation of employee performance shortfalls, let's just call it what it is, without actually keeping documentation? The organization wants their managers to be giving feedback to the employees right away. And so one of the ways that they've come up with a solution for this is that you're not allowed to actually keep documentation of the employees' infractions. And that way you're not throwing the kitchen sink at them. And I totally understand that problem and totally don't agree with this particular solution for it. My big recommendation is actually just keep shorthand. So I do like what executive management is pushing you towards, giving that feedback immediately, because that's one of the keys to feedback. Feedback loses its importance the less specific it is, and the further the feedback is given away from the actual event. So the longer you wait to give feedback and the less specific that feedback, the less effective it is. So you want to be hyper specific and hyper timely if you can. So absolutely a fan of that. What I would recommend in this case is that you keep shorthand. So it may be that you just write down the initials of the employee and then just a couple of initials, I want to say, to refresh your memory in regards to the specific instance. If you're giving it in a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day time frame, you shouldn't have an issue with remembering what it was the infraction was or the specifics surrounding that. And if you do, I would say actually continue to go with this kind of shorthand, because you will actually kind of build that muscle memory. Memory is something that can be trained. So I would keep shorthand on a Post-it note, maybe just in a drawer, and then when you give that feedback, throw the Post-it note away. So you're not keeping any files, but you are jotting down just a couple of, again, I say shorthand, and I really almost mean initials behind whatever it is. And that's one way that you can kind of keep track of it. Also, what you want to do is carve out time. So it may be that you need to schedule 15 minutes at 4 o'clock every day to be able to give that feedback out as you come across some of it, or at noon if you don't want to do it right at the end of the day. And actually, as I talk about that, I would recommend noon. One of the things about feedback is you want it to be a dialogue. And this is a big mistake that I see. People give their feedback at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. Never, ever accept a meeting from your boss at 4 o'clock on a Friday. But what happens is that when you give feedback, especially negative feedback, at the end of the day, you don't have a chance to create a dialogue or to reaffirm anything. Whereas if you give that feedback at 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, noon, 1 o'clock, you have a chance 4 hours, 5 hours in the day where you can catch them doing what you coach them to do right, so you're reaffirming that, and you're also able to interact with them more. If they have some questions about it, they can come to you. You can actually foster those questions, and that's a really good practice to get into, is giving your feedback early in the day so that you can follow up over the course of the day. What you don't want is you don't want to give that feedback and then have them go off for a weekend and stew about it and come up with all kinds of different motivations or ideas behind it when you could have eliminated those right off the bat. So that's a great question to start out with. Again, if you are in a situation where you're not allowed to keep that documentation, then giving that feedback in a timely fashion is more important. But you can jot down little notes that don't call anybody out, come up with some little shorthand sort of thing to kind of remind you of those things, and then just toss those at the end of the day so you're not keeping those and not throwing the kitchen sink at your employees. Again, Love the principle behind it, but don't like the way that they've structured that at all. So as more people have jumped on, if you have any questions about leadership in general, if you have any specific struggles with a particular employee, with a particular supervisor, go ahead, drop those down in the comment section. I will tackle those in real time and hopefully give you some answers and get you kind of moving along the path to addressing those particular issues. The next question I had was kind of a general question. That is, how do you develop employees properly? And I love the question, and that's the first aspect of development, is actually asking that question and trying to dive into that topic just a little bit more. So if you want to develop the team, what you need to do is you need to give them exposure to certain things, and you need to create an environment where it is okay for them to struggle. I won't say fail. Failure is celebrated perhaps a little bit too much, but a struggle is perfectly fine. So set up an environment where they can learn and where it is okay for them to struggle. So you are going to look to farm out special projects. You are looking to step back away from perhaps those special projects just a little bit so that the people have to kind of tread on their own. If I'm always holding a baby's hand, they aren't going to learn how to walk effectively until I learn to let go. Same thing with your employees. So look for those opportunities where they can grow a little bit in their development and deal with the struggle, because all of that growth, all of that strength, leadership strength that they're going to build comes from the struggle. Just like hitting the gym and you struggle to push up weight, that's the same thing as far as your mind is concerned in so many different things. What I would also do is I would also open up the discussion. So it isn't just that you are deciding what to do for them. Ask them what it is that they want to do. Put them on point. What this does is it crystallizes for them what they are looking to do. Yes, it gives you great advice on how exactly to build them up, but most importantly is crystallizing that vision of where people want to go. People might say, and it's very common for them to say, yes, I want to continue to move up in the organization. But if you ask them where their next job is, they don't know. And that's what you're doing in these conversations, is you're having that discussion with them. Well, where do you want to, where do you want to be? Where do you want to grow? Well, I mean, I'd love to be the, director of a department. Well, that's great. That's great. Which department? Well, I haven't thought about that very much. Well, let's think about it. What do you like to do? Do you like this department? Is there another one that we can get you into? You look at those things and you start building a plan. So you crystallize that goal and they're more likely to get to it. It's that old adage where if you write down a goal, you're more likely to achieve it. I find that if you can just crystallize what it is that you're looking for, you're more likely to achieve those things. And then that becomes the background where you can give them more exposure with projects that affect those. And I get asked all the time on these sessions about how to motivate employees. That's a great way to do it. If you want motivated employees, give them something out of it. What's in it for me? That's what I always talk about. Well, if they want to develop and grow in the organization, you can tie specific projects, tasks that they need to do to what that end goal is. So if you have somebody that wants to move into finance and you have a financial report that you need to get done, you can give that out to that person and say, hey, I know you want to work in finance, so let's give you some practice at it. They will be more motivated to do those things. That's a key. The last thing that I want to mention in regards to development is a lot of times there isn't enough thought given into it, and so people aren't developed, and that's where we talked about giving out special projects, finding opportunities for people to grow, stepping away so that they can struggle a little bit more and try to find those solutions themselves, bringing those people into the discussion and finding out what they need. The third part of development that I want to talk about is I want to talk about what the organization is going to need. It does no good for me to be in an accounting firm and work with somebody who wants to be a graphic designer. That doesn't help me. And it doesn't help the organization unless you can find a way to weave that into the overall goals. And I use that kind of weird example, but think about where the organization is going to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now. Don't go any further than that because it gets kind of fuzzy after that. But where is the organization going to be what are the challenges that the organization is going to face? Your department even. What is your department going to face in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months? How can you build up people? What skills are you going to need to build up in your team to be able to get them to help with the organizational development and where the organization needs to go and the challenges and the opportunities that the organization is going to face? It isn't just what the employee wants as far as their development is concerned. Where this really takes off is when you can match that with something that affects the organization as well. So what the organization is going to need 6 months, 12 months, because then you have the application of it, and that's that turbo, that's that jet fuel that you give to people's development, is when they're learning and they have a great application for it as well. So Mary, Egnath, Luke, and Jennifer, good to see you all here as well. Any questions? I will tackle them in real time. I am all caught up on questions right now, but I did want to tackle one more that I got offline, and that is, how do you ask for help from your boss when you don't ever get help from your boss? So I will refer initially, because I think it's a great discussion point to have, and that is from the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif something or other. But Jocko's the one that's out there a lot. Former Navy SEALs, Navy SEAL commanders, and it's all talking about taking ownership. And I love the book. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. It's one of my favorites on leadership because it's a great principle. But what he talked about is when they would go do roundtables when he was in leadership, and his boss would ask the team, hey, what do you need from me? What are you missing? He would always say, no, we're good. I don't need anything. Because he would handle it himself. And what happened is that when he did need something, he got it 90+% of the time, because he never asked for help, never asked for anything. So they knew that if he did, it was something that was important, and it was something that he couldn't manage himself. So I'd like to bring up that point, because a lot of times we use our bosses. I'm not saying this is the case, and I know I'm keeping it anonymous here, but I know this is probably not the case, but we use our bosses as a crutch. It's easy to get them to have the conversation with somebody and use their positional authority to get something across the finish line. But it is that struggle that is so important for your development as a leader. And I'm not saying don't lean on your boss, don't learn from your boss, don't ask for help from your boss. There's all kinds of things that you need to do and things that you need their help with. But wherever possible, lean into the struggle yourself and try to find a way through it. Okay? Now that leads into some of the more like practical and immediate things that we can do as far as getting help from your boss. First thing is when you're talking to your boss, and this goes for getting them to listen to you as well. When you're talking with your boss, make sure that you're tying what you're talking to. Make sure you're tying what you're asking for to something that they care about. Now, it can be that, it's overall sales. It can be profitability. It can be cost cutting. It can be customer service. What is it that they care about? What is it that they talk about? What is it that their boss is on their case about? If you're clear about those things and you can tie what you're asking for to what they care about, you're more likely to get it. The other thing is make sure that you have thought through the need for it, okay? You don't want to ask for something and they go, well, could you just do this? Oh, yeah, I guess we could. Now you've just shot down the help that you're getting there, but you've also planted that seed of doubt for future things that you ask for. So think it through. Think through that plan. Think through different alternatives. Mention the alternatives that you have tried or that you have considered and why it is that this is the exact thing that is necessary in this case. But those are the couple of big things to tie. Tie it to something that your boss cares about. That's a principle of getting them to listen to you at all, but especially if you're asking for help with something. And then show them that you've thought it through and that this is the only and the best course of action for the organization and for your department as far as meeting those goals are concerned. So again, I'm caught up on questions. So anybody who's got any questions here on a Wednesday afternoon here in sunny Las Vegas, if you've got any of those, drop them down in the comment section. I will go ahead and tackle those in real time. The next question, the last question I've got here. So if I don't get any more questions, we're going to end this session nice and early. So if you've got anything, please throw it in the comment section there. And this is one I dealt with before too. And My boss tends to get emotional, and this, I can definitely tell why this didn't end up in the comment section. My boss tends to get emotional and is demonstrating anger and seems to use anger as some sort of leverage and motivational tool. And that is so difficult to deal with when your boss is angry because it affects the morale of everybody that is around them. What I tell people to do in these cases is really focus on action. So when you're talking about a peer, anger is often a bullying technique. So you simply stand up calmly. You don't challenge because anger will feed off of anger. So you don't challenge. It's a test of you being able to remain calm, cool, and focused. But you don't clarify the issue. You don't get defensive. That's the big mistake that people make. And it adds fuel to that fire. What you want to do is you want to focus on action. What are the specific actions that you can take right now to address the issue? So I can't believe that we fell short for the 7th day in a row on this, particular metric. Okay, well, what we want to do, and you could come up with all kinds of solutions, excuses. We were short-staffed. We didn't have any inventory, whatever it happens to be. Okay, well, can we focus on, we're going to focus on this, this, and this. Well, let's get back to the basics. Come up with some solutions for it. Get solution-focused and action-focused. And what that does is that takes their mindset out of the past, whatever that infraction was that pissed them off, and it gets them focused on a potential future. So meet that anger with calm, cool, don't feed it, don't get defensive, but focus on the action and the plan moving forward. That is the thing that will diffuse that anger and get everybody focused on something better, because it also affects everybody else that's in the department. When the boss is screaming and yelling, everybody hears it. But if everybody then has an action to take, you move past that. You don't dwell in that area. Same thing with, negativity or, defeat, that sort of thing. You don't get focused on that defeat. You don't get focused in that place. You get focused on the actions to get you out of that. And that's the best way to deal with anger constructively. Hey, Luke, love seeing you here. How do you get buy-in to a specific long-term goal? A couple of things. Maybe it's just one thing that has a whole bunch of cascades to it. So I was going to talk about the WIFM. So what's in it for me? So when you want buy-in for a long-term goal, what is the benefit of your employees of reaching this long-term goal? Is it that the store gets prestige factor? Is it that the store is more secure? Maybe their job security. Those financial impacts. If the company is healthy, then everybody feels more secure in their job. Are those the things? Are there going to be opportunities for promotion if you meet those long-term goals? What's in it for the employee? Try to get that really nailed in. The other thing is in regards to buy-in is bringing them into the discussion, Luke. So what I want you to do is I want you to have a team meeting and you talk about the long-term goal and talk about what has worked in regards to it and what hasn't worked in regards to it, and then what you can do with that knowledge of what has worked and what hasn't worked and what ideas people have. Bring them into the discussion. Do not formulate the plan yourself. Formulate the plan with the team. Talk it out. Publicize what you guys are talking about. It may be that if you have, and I know you have a number of employees, perhaps it's that you take the leads. No, I take that back. Don't take the leads. Take line level employees, but take a subset. So it may be 1 in every 5 employees or something is on the project planning team for this. What you do is you get better insight and people take ownership over that plan and that long-term goal. When they have their ideas somewhere on the board as far as a project plan is concerned, or they know that they are going to focus on this particular area when August comes around and it's their idea, they have more buy-in to not just that month, but all of the other aspects of it. But the key to buy-in is ownership. So yes, deal with what's in it for them, all right? What is the benefit of reaching this long-term goal? But bringing them into the plan is something that's going to establish some ownership, and then you get automatic buy-in with that ownership. And if you're taking 1 in every 5 employees into this group, they affect everybody that's around them. So you will still have that 10%, maybe even 20% in a bad case scenario, that aren't really buying into the project. But if you have better buy-in from everybody else, you're gonna see those benefits. Let me know if that kind of resonated with you, Luke, or whether we need to kind of dive in, because that's a great question for everybody out there as far as getting buy-in. When you want more buy-in, get more engagement with your team. That's the key. Mary has the next question, and it's, what do you recommend for someone who is the boss, me, in how to deal with employees that go to you for everything instead of their managers? Great question, Mary. And usually I get this from the flip side, where people are going over their managers' heads to their boss. So what I would recommend in this case is, A, straight up hit them. Have you talked to Cameron? I'll use me as a manager. Have you talked to Cameron about this? Have you talked to Lori about this? Have you talked to Luke about this? So first, defer. All right, that's the first thing that you want to do. The next thing that you want to do is what you would do if you were the manager and they're coming to you too often, even if it's within the chain of the command, and that is, what do you think we should do? And what you're doing with that is you're building up their decision-making needs. I'm half getting the impression here they're bringing you things that they should probably be tackling themselves as well. So get them, well, when they give you the answer and it's correct, say, that's great, do that. And in the future, continue to do that. That's the way to handle that situation. If they're wrong, then you can coach them on that. But defer it first. Have you talked to Cameron? Have you talked to Mary? Have you talked to Luke about this? Whoever their manager is in the proper chain of command, and this is good for everybody out there. Have you talked to them about it? Because I think they should have some insight into this and some stake in what's going on, but then also put it back on the employee and build them up so that they don't have to come to you at all in the future. Great question. Lori has the next one. It's, what about an employee, higher level, that goes your manager instead? The team manager. So Lori, I kind of answered that just a little bit, and that is having the discussion with the team manager. I know that's what everybody usually wants to avoid, especially when you're talking about moving into executive ranks where people are going way over your head on those issues. But talk to and say, hey, you've got, and this is where you get to the WIFM on so many of these issues. It's what's in it for me. That's your tool of persuasion. Hey, you've got a ton of things going on, and I know that you want to understand what's going on in the operation. But when Cameron comes to you with a question that I could easily answer, if you could just direct him to me, that would be great, because I want to work with him to develop him a little bit more. So you see, you're throwing a couple of things out there. You're trying to save them time, so you're being conscientious to them. But you also have a method to the madness, and that is developing the employee. And we do that through asking them what they think they should do in that particular situation. So you're building that employee up. So you're tackling it from a couple of different areas, and keep doing that. Also, deal with the employee. Hey, I know you went to, Joe Schmo executive up there for that question. That's something I can totally take off your hands, and I want to be able to do that for you. They are super busy, and I can totally give you an answer much quicker than they can, and it helps us work through some things as well. Hey, if you need to bring something to their attention, then great, that's fine. But for these sorts of issues, I can absolutely be the person to help you, and I should be the person to help you. So you just call out that behavior. So much of getting what you want out of employees as far as accountability and about performance is simply telling them what the expectation is and telling them what you want. That is half the battle, but we try to get cute with it and we try to be subtle with it too many times, and they miss the message that we could be giving them. Yamna has the next question. So good to see you here, Yamna. How to not regret certain period of time, especially when you realize that you were underestimated. In other words, how to move forward, how to stay positive, especially after you realize that you lost time with wrong people or wrong place. And Yamna, I can sympathize. Last week I was giving a couple of speeches out in Washington, D.C., and an accountant came up to me, and the situation, not getting too deep into it, but basically she lost 7 months where it was completely a waste. Absolute total waste of her time. And the best thing to do is realize, A, that happens to everybody, Yamna. Everybody has those times where there is a mistake that they make in where they go. That's been a big topic this week, is when people take jobs where it doesn't work out. There are going to be those times and setbacks. There's going to be those times where you get on a project and it's not nearly as successful as it was supposed to be, or it fails flat out. So realizing that those times are very normal and they happen, but also realizing that the actions that you take now will determine how quickly you come out of that and how far you get back up on your feet. So my advice to you is the same advice that I gave this woman after the speech last week, and that is, what can you do now to, in that case, support the boss? What can you do in this case to find the employees that are going to help you build, to develop those particular individuals? How are you going to form those relationships? Get focused on action towards your goal, and you will get past this. This is that whole dwelling thing. Action cures dwelling. When you are moving towards a goal and you are taking action on that goal, you are not nearly as worried about what's behind you. You don't have time to look back because you're too busy looking forward on what your actions are. So get clear on your goal, Yamna, moving forward. What is my goal? And what action can you take today? And what action can you take tomorrow? And what action can you take next week? Fill yourself up with actions towards that particular goal, and you will get past this setback in your career. Sorry you're going through that, but again, focus on the goal and then focus on the actions to get through, and that's what's going to carry you forward. Mary, I'm glad that worked out for you. Esther has the next question. Is, what do you suggest if a department head of another department who does not want his staff to engage with my team? That's a really good one. What I would do is, because that's such an I want to say almost an extreme example that doesn't make sense, I would actually engage that other department head and say, hey, I understand that you don't want your team engaging with my team. Why might that be? What are you looking to accomplish from that? And it may be that it's a timing thing. I don't want my team wasting their time chit-chatting with your team. I'd rather they are focused on their job. That could be a reason why. It could be that you are a fantastic manager and they don't want their team associating with your team, because then they'll realize how poor of a manager they are. I've seen it before, exactly that sort of scenario that plays out. So get some understanding. The person that understands better in a conflict like this is the one who wins. So ask them questions, dive a little deeper. Okay, so you're looking for productivity gains. Well, why is my team affecting your productivity gains? Or how can my team affect it positively as opposed to negatively? So get a better understanding. But what you can also do is, if it's legitimate, on a certain level at least, come up with some ground rules. Okay. Well, we need to interact on certain things like invoices and like customer account creation, or whatever those examples are. Can we at least agree how we are going to interact in those areas? So you at least get that baseline in place and you get a clear understanding of what the ground rules are as far as that engagement is concerned. As you've laid it out, it doesn't sound like it is reasonable, and I'm sure nobody else is taking it as reasonable. So where are the lines where that team is able to engage with your team and help you out? So get clear on the understanding and the motivation, and see if there's a way that you can flip that around to where you can help them in a particular area, and or get the ground rules on when you can engage. And you can talk about what you need, tie it to overall goals of the organization, so it's not just about you, it's about the team and everybody, and set those ground rules in place. I hope that helps. I know that's a tough situation, but just how I'm kind of reading it here, that'd be my advice on that. What book do you suggest to read to improve my leadership? Muhammad, I love it. Always a good question to ask. I'll tell you what my two favorite, I'll give you a whole laundry list, what the heck. And you can replay this video to get them all. But my top two are always The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And I threw this out to an audience that I was speaking to last week, and everybody laughed because everybody had read it. And my response was, read it again. Because just because you read something once 10 years ago doesn't mean that you're going to bring the same things to it this time around. And so if you've read some of those great leadership books in the past, and I know for a lot of people that can be 10, 12, 15 years ago, reread it. yes, you'll go over some of the same stuff, but you're in a different place and you will apply different things. So The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. If you're talking change management, very quick read, and it is what I always assigned my supervisors back in my career when I came into a new position, was Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. That's a great one as far as change management, and it's a quick hour-and-a-half read, something like that. And I will throw out for a new one, and I mentioned it earlier, and that is Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Now I think I'm remembering that name. Extreme Ownership is one of the best leadership books that I've seen come out in the last few years. So definitely check that one out. But again, if there was a book that was powerful for you in the past, go back and reread it. If you've read it twice, read it a third time. You will pick something up new and you will have a new application for it. Yes, Luke throws it out there. Yeah, I'm glad I got the second on that one. That's a great one. Everything is interpersonal relationships with leadership, and that's why I come back to that one. And, you know, we talk about Dale Carnegie and we talk about Stephen Covey. Those guys are foundational. It's like when you talk music and everybody goes, well, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, everything that's foundational for all the music that you hear today. It's those books and those concepts that are really critical there. Next one comes from Liz, and it's, how do you handle a situation where the team manager does not give the expectations and the team members second guess expectations? The team manager also denies the team access to resources to achieve results. How do you handle this without being seen as insubordinate? Sorry you find yourself in that situation, Liz, and you know, coming at it from the outside, it's clear you kind of have what I want to say is a selfish manager. Who's using ignorance to maintain their control. That's what happens a lot. When you see a bad boss who withholds information from the team, that withholding of information is withholding power. They're not empowering anybody else so that they are more secure in their position. What I would recommend in this case is actually exercise some leadership on your part. Well, what expectations make sense? You can probably, between you and a few of your peers, figure out what the expectations are from a performance standpoint and start holding yourselves accountable for that. What you also do when you do that is you create a dialogue. And so you're missing out on resources. Well, what are ways that everybody is, handling those resources, that resource starving, shall we say. So you come up with some best practices. And this is a test of your own leadership, Liz. And I'm not saying this is a good spot to be in by any stretch of the imagination, but there are some opportunities for you there. So set the expectations amongst you and your team. Hey, what makes sense? What are we supposed to do? Everybody feels the same way, I'm sure. We don't know what we're supposed to do. Okay, what should we do? And come up with the reasoning why you have certain thresholds, why you have to do certain things. Come up with that stark reason why, and then talk through some of your best practices and best principles for dealing with it. That is the constructive way of handling it. When you come up with those clear expectations, you're also able to have a little bit firmer footing with your boss when you're asking for things from them. And when their boss comes around, I don't recommend, unless it's extreme, going to HR or their boss, because that rarely works out well. But when somebody else comes in, you can talk through, I want you to mention 2 positive things that are going on, and then I want you to mention one particular struggle. So it'd be great to talk about all of the resources when their boss, strolls through the office, talk about all of the resources that you're being denied and all of the bad things on your manager. But what I want you to do is I want you to focus on 2 positive things and then 1 negative thing. And I really want that to be a constructive struggle. We've done really well with sales. We've done really well as far as the hours that we're staffing. We could use better help in regards to inventory, for instance. And that might be, one of the resources that you're missing out on. So you're talking positive, but you're also being constructive. And that looks great on you and doesn't step on your manager's toes. And actually, by saying so many positive things in like 1 or 2 specific struggles, that boss often wants to be the hero and wants to come in and be viewed constructively. And so oftentimes they will be able to take care of those things and get that across the finish line for you. It's a tough situation to be in. There's no really easy way out of it. And I wish I had the magic pill for it, but I really don't. Try to do what you can to handle it internally amongst you and your peers. And then when you see those lifelines out there, use them properly. Not to beat up your manager, but to be constructive and positive, and that usually gets the better results. Great for managing yourself ununderpaid. The chimp paradox. I'm going to have to check that out, Luke. Thank you very much. All right, I am caught up. So if you have any other questions, drop them down into the comments section. I'll give you about 10 or 15 seconds. Otherwise, it will just get pushed off till tomorrow. And if you haven't checked out the podcast, it'll be up there. YouTube, I put these up on YouTube as well for everybody who wants to view those over there. Love to see you check those out over there. And again, any questions, you can always private message me, cm@CameronMorrissey.com through email, or just private message through Facebook. If you want to keep it anonymous, I'm happy to do that because I understand some of these issues are sensitive. But with that said, appreciate everybody out there, and I will be talking to you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.